You want to know who's making money off the war besides the military-industrial complex directly? It's also Goldman Sachs. You want to know how they profit? Goldman Sachs profits from war in Ukraine, loophole in sanctions. So here, let's go to this report.
President Biden will be addressing the nation tomorrow morning. He is likely going to say that he'll be discussing ways to hold Russia accountable for what they are calling an unprovoked and unjustified war on Ukraine. But as many businesses are pulling out of Russia, we've got exclusive new reporting tonight on how one of America's biggest investment banks is profiting on the war in Ukraine. Goldman Sachs. They say they are winding down operations in Russia, which is partially true, because at the very same time, they're actively trading Russian debt to U.S. clients, mostly hedge funds, and they're using a legal loophole to do it. A Goldman Sachs spokesperson tells us this: we have a robust system and control throughout our organization to ensure we are not trading with sanctioned counterparties, which is true. NBC's senior national politics reporter, Jonathan Allen, is my partner on this story. Mr. Allen, when I texted you at 8:08 this morning and said, hey, John, you up? Did you think that's where we'd end up, right here?
It's been a long day, Stephanie, a lot of reporting, and my hat's off to you for your indefatigable nature as a reporter all day long and then doing an hour-long show.
I can't spell that word. So start us with, what is this loophole? How is this happening?
I would say infatigable.
So what happened is when the Biden administration put in sanctions on Russian debt, basically on the major financial institutions of Russia, they left open a window, and Goldman Sachs has driven a truck through it. And basically what that window is that U.S. institutions are banned from trading Russian debt with those Russian banks that have been sanctioned, but not banned from what's called secondary trade. So if that debt was already issued to somebody else and they want to sell it to a U.S. buyer, a U.S. Debt holder of Russia to a U.S. buyer, Goldman Sachs is acting as a brokerage, and the government, the Biden administration, has left that loophole open with the basic idea that companies here in this country, institutions in this country that hold Russian debt ought to be able to get rid of it. But at the same time, there are a lot of buyers for what is now seen as cheap debt. And Goldman Sachs has been advertising that to its clients and basically saying, hey, come on board while this debt is cheap. It's going to eventually go up later and you'll make a killing.
Okay, and that's what we need to explain. The idea, hey, let people still trade this so they can close out their positions so there's not chaos in the market, that's really getting abused, because what they are doing is trading hundreds of millions of bonds. Goldman Sachs is going out and pitching trade ideas, market dislocations to distressed hedge funds who are looking to buy something cheap in a crisis. And that's what they do. But this isn't a regular crisis. It's not a company going bankrupt. It is a war. And let's remind you, when you buy Russian government bonds, you are now lending to the Russian government. And when you buy Russian corporate bonds, you are helping that company succeed. So right now, Goldman Sachs is making markets and making money, which is certainly not in line with the spirit of the headline, we are winding down and leaving Russia. And John, the reason I wanted to do this, my takeaway, it doesn't matter how much Wall Street tries to rebrand itself with new slogans, it doesn't change. So if you're a vulture, be a vulture. But do not come flapping your wings to my window and call yourself a dove of peace, because all that Goldman is doing flies in the face of what all of the United States and our Western allies are trying to do. What does the administration say?
You know, when I talk to senior administration officials, current and former officials, what they're saying is that they're very worried, and we hear President Biden say this all the time, they're very worried that if they punish Russia, they're going to end up harming Americans, and they're trying to be very careful not to do that. Of course, there are sanctions that they could do that would be more targeted, more direct.
When they say we're worried about harming Americans, they mean American donors. They don't mean American citizens. They've already screwed us with gas prices and inflation, and they don't care. He means American donors, the donor class, the hedge funds.
Goldman Sachs is what he means.
That's what he means. He means the Goldman Sachs. That's exactly right. Yeah, here we go.
Might be able to cut off this kind of business. And I talked to Congressman Brad Sherman from California today, who is bringing forward legislation dealing with banks next week. He said it might be a good idea to close off this business that Goldman Sachs is involved in the future if it can be shown that what they'd be able to do is drive down the price of future Russian debt by stopping Goldman Sachs from trading in current and existing Russian debt.
But John, it's not just Goldman, right? Think about this ban on Russian oil. All of this is to try to squeeze these companies and hurt the Russian economy. And in turn, it's causing our gas prices to go up. But I actually read, it was from March 4th, a trade recommendation report from Goldman Sachs. And they wrote, we see Lukoil, the Russian oil company, as the best recovery play of distressed Russian corporates. So you've got JP Morgan saying, here's a good play for this Russian oil company. At the same time, we're banning Russian oil and the American consumer is suffering for it. How is this kosher?
Well, it's kosher because it's totally legal. And sometimes what's scandalous and what doesn't meet with some people's moral views of the world is legal. And that's the case here. You use the vulture analogy. I'd use the scorpion and the turtle. The scorpion's going to sting and they're both going to go down.
So there you have it. There's a little bit more to this here. Most investors. Go ahead.
Was that her first day at work or something? What? How is she shocked? I feel like I can't believe it. It's like they don't care about all this crap they tell us.
So most investors have shied away from the obvious public relations risk of profiting from Russia's war, but Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, and many hedge funds have gotten into the action. In most cases, the buyers do not know the identities of the sellers, and no regulation requires brokers to disclose the identities publicly.
Isn't Chase known for cutting people's bank accounts off for being bad dudes? Like, isn't that what they're well known for doing, is shutting down bank accounts of like Americans? Like, they don't do it for this.
I know they're well known for kicking people out of their homes during a financial crisis that they themselves engineered. I know
they have like censorship things they do on people for,
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're all the bad people. Of course, I don't have sympathy for the bad people when it happens, but it's weird they don't do that for this. I would think Russia would be even worse than your average Proud Boy or whatever.
Yeah, you would think. Okay, let's go back to this. It says that means the public may never know whether profits are derived by pumping money into the pockets of Putin's cronies when Russia faces a cash crunch. In other words, it is more clear that U.S. investors and middlemen like Goldman Sachs are profiting from these cheap costs of Russian debt, and less clear who is benefiting from the sales. So Russia and Goldman Sachs are profiting, we know that. While Goldman is dealing mostly in Russian government debts, JP Morgan Chase has brokered deals for the debt of private Russian companies as a recovery play. JP Morgan announced late Thursday that it is also winding down its business in Russia while acknowledging that it has been assisting clients in Russia-related trades. On March 4th, as Russia was attacking Ukraine, the investment bank's research team issued a report recommending that clients buy Russian corporate bonds. And so now you know the rest of the story. And I mean, just imagine if they were doing that with Iraq, as we were invited. They probably were. We just didn't know about it.
Of course, remember Arrested Development? The dad was in trouble because he was doing business with Saddam. In real life, that wouldn't be an issue at all.
Right.
Like, that wouldn't.
Right. Wow. So there you go. So again, while you pay more money for Joe Biden to try to get his poll numbers up by doing a war in Ukraine, while you pay more money for everything, including gas, Goldman Sachs is helping Russia make money. And they're making money doing it. And so is JP Morgan, Chase, and all those folks. It's just, you're a sucker. Again, if you play by the rules in this country, you're a sucker. Because the people who run this country is 100% corrupt, run by criminals. You don't think so? Who do you think runs this fucking country? War criminals, literal war criminals. We're doing another war in Ukraine right now over a pipeline and energy resources and hegemony. This is what this is about. We're literally in bed with Nazis. We're figuratively in bed with Nazis to get this done.
Free, Jimmy. They told you.
I know. It's not free.
You have to get in bed with Nazis.
Okay. Wow. Hey, we got more dates for our 2022 stand-up tour. We're going everywhere. We're going to Dallas, Houston, Florida. We're going to Omaha, Des Moines, Pittsburgh, Columbus, Ohio, and Los Angeles. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all the tickets for all our shows.